Hey, what's up, everybody? So you're getting me first before the actual episode because, oh my God, I recorded the entire episode yesterday, and then I realized Trump is addressing Congress for the first time, and so obviously I had to watch that, and I wanted to give you my thoughts. I'm not going to do an in-depth analysis on it because first of all, I don't think you guys want to hear that. It's funny. The last year when I would do the episodes after the debates and like all that, not good ratings for the deep shallow dive. I don't think people cared that much. I don't know, maybe you guys are into this a little bit more now. But regardless, I'm not going to go like topic by topic in terms of what he talked about last night. Instead, I'm just going to give you some top line thoughts and then we'll get into the episode. Honestly, my biggest top line takeaway from last night is I am seriously embarrassed to be an American with our Congress. I'm not talking about President Trump right now. I'm talking about our Congress. I think they're embarrassing. I mean, they are just like this is ridiculous that this is the best we have, or the people we have. It's not the best we have by any stretch. And I'll give you examples. Let's start off on the Republican side. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene wearing a red MAGA hat. I mean, that's just ridiculous to me. That's like not any different than Vladimir Zelensky not wearing a suit. It's like, okay, you know what? We get it. You're super MAGA. That's great. I don't have an issue with that. But, you don't need to wear the hat. It's just ridiculous. And then on the Democrat side, honestly, the beginning of it, they were getting all rowdy. They ended up kicking one guy out, and it was just so like pathetic. I don't even know who that guy was that got kicked out, but he looked like he had a cane, and so like I thought that was ridiculous. And then overall, to be honest, this is the bigger criticism, and I'm not even going to, even though it's directed at the Democrats. 4 years ago, when President Biden did this exact same thing, it was no different. You could sub in the Republicans. And what I mean is the fact that last night, and again, 4 years ago, I want to be fair about this. The fact that they did not stand up or clap at anything President Trump said. And again, 4 years ago, the fact that the Republicans acted the exact same way and they didn't stand up or clap at anything, it just shows you how completely dysfunctional our government is and this two-party system is. And quite frankly, it honestly showed me last night, and again, 4 years ago on this same exact date or whatever, when it was the first congressional address for Biden, it shows me that, they just want division. They don't want an entire country all getting along kind of the way we did in the 70s, 80s, like I think there was so much more unity in the country during the 70s and 80s and even the 90s. I'm telling you, I think everything changed with 9/11. And let me give you an example from last night that honestly was just embarrassing to me. When President Trump honored Laken Riley's parents, I think, and if you don't remember, Laken Riley's that Georgia, I think she went to Georgia. Hold on, let me check because I don't want to be disrespectful. Yeah, she's the 22-year-old nursing student that was murdered February 22nd, 2024, while jogging at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. And her death was the one that, because it was basically an illegal immigrant that jumped out of the woods and killed her. And so it brought up that whole campus safety and, discussions regarding immigration and illegal immigration and all that. But my point is, when he talked about Laken Riley, the fact that no Democrat clapped and no Democrat stood up to honor a 22-year-old girl who was murdered while jogging on her college campus, that literally could have been any one of our daughters, your daughters. And so to me, like, that was so embarrassing. If you think about the fact that these are our politicians and, what is their moral compass and what do they value as human beings if they can't even put aside their party affiliation one time during the night, or to be honest, whenever during the night that Trump made a good point, but especially with this Lake and Riley thing, for some reason that really stood out to me. And I was like, oh my God, like, can you imagine being Lake and Riley's mother and father sitting in the audience and then looking and your daughter's being honored because she was literally murdered, and then like scanning the audience and literally half of the audience is sitting down and not clapping and not honoring your daughter? Like, that's just embarrassing. I thought that was such a poor display. And then again, I'm not going to go issue by issue, but there were things that Trump said that were good, and I think it's a real indication of just, quite frankly, how broken our political two-party system is. And again, here's the thing. Honestly, we could go back and play from 4 years ago, and I'm sure it would have been the exact same thing. And to be honest with you, maybe I'll even do that, but I'm sure there was probably something President Biden said that if I went back and listened now, I would feel embarrassed that no Republicans clapped. I'm sure that's the case, and maybe I will go do that just to kind of prove a point. But anyway, regardless, that was my biggest takeaway from last night. And it's the same takeaway I've had a few different times. And I think I've even articulated it in saying that the fact that we are at a point where nothing the Republicans do, the Democrats will agree with. Nothing the Democrats do or did, let's say over the 4 years, the Republicans will agree with. And quite frankly, maybe that's job security, and maybe that's what they want. And they don't want the American people to all come together collectively. Think about it. If the American people all come together collectively and we were truly one country, that would be an American Renaissance. That is when we would absolutely unleash American power. And that, to me, is the golden age of America again. Even though Trump says we're going to go through it now, you're going to go through it or try to implement it with half the country hating you and half of the Congress, or 48% of the Congress, not supporting what you do. Imagine if all the country was behind you, and imagine if all the Congress got along and we basically were operating at 100%. That would be the golden age of America. That really would. Anyway, that was my big overall takeaway. My other takeaway just about President Trump is that, I thought he started out pretty bad. It was very self-gratifying. He kind of was patting himself on the back a ton, and I expected that. I thought he bagged on Biden and Kamala Harris too much. I mean, again, it's like, who cares, dude? Why are you even giving them airtime? Like, just move on. And then my biggest criticism, before I get into some of the things that I liked, my biggest criticism about Trump is the same criticism I've had, quite frankly, for the past 8 years. And that is, he just speaks to his base and he speaks to the people that love him. And he doesn't realize that instead of addressing them and telling them what they want to hear, if you just flip the script and speak to the people that don't like you and people that absolutely are not on your side, you probably, honestly, I think he could win those people over. I really do. I really think that if you position everything coming from a place of, honestly, it's really a place of empathy more than anything. It absolutely is a place of empathy. And that's just one of the things that I don't know if he's capable of doing that. I was talking to a couple friends last night and I said, can you imagine if President Trump had the communication skills and the the oratory or oration, I don't know which word that is, but if he was able to communicate like President Obama, seriously, I mean, I know not many can communicate, if any, quite frankly, can communicate as well as Obama. He really was an insanely talented and is an insanely talented communicator. But more than anything, I think if he would just really understand how to leverage empathy and basically talk to the American people. Again, talk to the half of the American people that are not your fans. And what's sad is he had and potentially continues to have, although I think it's kind of lost its luster, the perfect opportunity. And that was the failed assassination attempt. And that was the bullet. And he brought that up again last night. But again, he just does it in a way where it doesn't make you, it doesn't pull at your heartstrings, and it doesn't like make you empathetic for him. You know what I mean? Like seriously, like you don't get empathy for him almost being assassinated by the way he talks about it. And it's the same thing I said back last July when there was that assassination attempt. I said, if he had come out and really said, hey, you know what? Let's turn the page. Honestly, even last night, he could have been like, I want to bring Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. I want to bring the Democratic leadership on the stage. And in front of the American people, I want to extend my hand and say, let's work together to bring the golden age of America back. Imagine if he did that. That would have been insane because, first of all, he's totally debilitating the Democrats by doing that. That's not the word I'm looking for, but he's disarming them. That's the word I'm looking for. He would completely disarm them because if they don't come up in front of the entire world and especially in front of America, they're the ones that look silly. So, again, that might be a little extreme of something to do, but maybe not. And my overall point is he should just disarm them, and he should just make everything come from a place of, honestly, empathy. I hate to keep using that word, but man, if he really could embrace that skill, I think he would be unstoppable. I really do, because obviously a lot of things he talked about, again, even the waste, fraud, and abuse stuff he talked about, the bringing more jobs to America, the investments that Apple, $500 billion, OpenAI and Oracle, $500 billion, SoftBank, $200 billion. Now, I don't know if this stuff's going to come to fruition, or if this is just kind of like, selling the sizzle, not the steak. But even regardless of that stuff, there's definitely some good policy that he has already enacted through executive order, and there's good policy that's going to be enacted. But anyway, that's it. I don't want to get too much more on that. Again, I think my biggest takeaway is, unfortunately, the system likes being divided. It really does, because I had thought maybe he would approach things differently coming out of the assassination attempt. I really did. But I don't see it. I don't see any real attempt at, bridging across party lines. And I don't see any attempt at causing unity. Instead, I think he's just going to try to, drive home what he thinks is right. And, hopefully that is a huge benefit to America. And I don't know, maybe then he gets to say, I told you so. But I'm telling you, he could just disarm the entire Democratic Party if he approached them from a more empathetic place. All right, that's it. That's about 14 and a half minutes on that. And now let's get into today's episode. I think you're going to like it. It's a little continuation on the whole Ukraine-Russia stuff, and it features my man crush, Professor Jeffrey Sachs.
The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, people? Sup, sup, what's up? What's up? What's up? Oh man, I can't really hit those high notes with this microphone. It gets distorted. Anyway, hey, how are you guys? I hope you're doing well. Happy Wednesday, hump day. I did not put out an episode yesterday because I thought maybe you need 2 days to get through the Trump-Zelensky presser recap. Because man, that thing ended up being an hour and 50 minutes or something like that. But hey, I really appreciate all the feedback. I actually got a ton. I literally did. I got more than I normally get. Normally I get like maybe, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 30 messages, but like I got over 100 messages, which was really cool. And I really appreciated it. I had a lot of people saying, hey, this one took me a little longer to get through, but I really learned a lot from the breakdown and all that. I did have one buddy say, bro, you shouldn't be throwing stones at little Marco Rubio sitting on the couch. And I was like, why? He's like, you're not the tallest dude in the world, bro. And I was like, you know what? You're actually right about that. He's like, chances are if you were sitting on that couch, your feet would be dangling. That's funny, man. I love that I have friendships like this, that somebody can literally leave that on my voicemail and then just hang up. That shit was funny. And he's right. So, you know what? I apologize to little Marco Rubio. Still not a fan, but anyway. Okay. Seriously, I don't want to keep talking this Ukraine-Russia stuff, but I do need to talk it a little bit more. And let me tell you why. Honestly, you know, I think we have to get to a point where let me see how I want to say this. You know, I'll be very honest. I try not to be a dick on social media. I really do. I really try not to be a dick. Like, I'm not confrontational with people. I'm not like overly aggressive by any stretch. And if you've ever seen that, you know, call me out on it. But, you know, it's getting to a point, although I will say I'm a little more aggressive on the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram and social media than I am on the Ray Star. And you know what? That's a little bit of a bitch move on my part. I'm not going to lie. I guess I'm hiding behind the Deep Shallow Dive, not facade, because it's not a facade, but the Deep Shallow Dive, I don't know, curtain. So you know what? I'm going to call myself out on that. That's a little bit of a bitch move on my part. So, all right, maybe I'll stop doing that. But what I want to say is that, you know, this cycle of, it's not even information, misinformation, disinformation, but this cycle of lack of information and then making grandiose statements and, you know, people thinking that they're going to look like someone that is on top of, I don't know, politics, on top of world affairs, on top of geopolitics, by, you know, changing, in this case, changing their profile banner or cover to I stand with Ukraine and all that. I'm not saying I'm going to call that stuff out. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to. I honestly have too much respect for the equity of my friendships, and quite frankly, I have too much respect for my friendships before 2016 and really before we got so social media crazed. So I'm not going to call that stuff out, but because I'm seeing that so much, and again, especially with all of the sudden, and by the way, last week, 2 weeks ago, you didn't see anybody posting I stand with Ukraine. The only reason they posted I stand with Ukraine starting on, I think I started seeing it on Saturday or Sunday. It's all obviously in response to the press conference. And as as you heard on the Monday episode, think about it. A 59-minute press conference, 50 minutes of it were totally civil, 9 minutes of it got zesty, probably even less than that, maybe like 4 minutes of it got zesty, and all of a sudden they think they're geopolitical experts because they listened to 3 or 4 60-second clips on Instagram and Facebook. And they're the clips that, everybody wanted people to hear. And quite frankly, they were the clips that, again, created the narrative of, oh my God, Trump and Vance were mean to Zelensky. I'm so embarrassed. I mean, I saw people posting it's like they were writing an apology to Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Like, random girl I went to high school with is like posting this, soliloquy apology to Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people on behalf of Americans because, oh, I'm so sorry you got treated like that. Again, I'm not gonna get into it with people that I know, but there's been collective 1.5 million young men between 700,000 Russians, supposedly 800,000 Ukrainians, supposedly, that have been killed, okay? 1.5 million dead young men, okay? $350 billion collectively between Europe and the United States. 200 billion from us, which Zelensky says he only got 75 billion. So there's 125 billion dollars unaccounted for. Seriously, 125 billion dollars. We could eradicate homelessness in the United States with that, and that's unaccounted for right now. And then there's 150 billion from Europe that was also sent. So nobody's putting focus on that. Instead, you want to apologize for 4 minutes of heated discussion. That's just crazy. It's just crazy. And I don't even know what it shows. Like, I'm trying to figure out how we got here as a society and as a country, and like how and why has social media created such a dysfunctional feedback system, But most importantly, I do want you guys, as the Deep Shallow Dive listeners and family and nation, I want you guys to know the truth. And I want you guys, actually, I shouldn't even say the truth. I want you guys to know the facts as I see them. And the facts as again, I've researched them and as I understand them. If you decide you don't agree with that, that's totally fine. But at least have this fact set with you and in your mind. So again, if you are in a conversation, it'll be up to you whether you want to, assert an opinion on things. Because again, I think things are spiraling again. I really do. I have a feeling we're going to get right back into the way things were in 2020. And whether that was what's the word I'm looking for? Whether that was arguments over the vaccine, arguments over wearing a mask, arguments over then the election of 2020, and so on and so forth. I see us falling right back into that trap. And this time, I think, personally, I'm going to try to at least equip anyone that listens to me with a proper fact set and a proper data set. So if you were to get into a discussion about Ukraine and somebody comes at you with the 2 or 3 talking points that they see on CNN or MSNBC or even on Fox. Like I said, all 3 of those networks, to me, they are unwatchable. Fox is unwatchable. I can't even watch that anymore. And I did used to watch it. I watched it through COVID. Okay. CNN, MSNBC, I can't watch it. People like Joy Reid, Rachel Maddow, they're no different than Sean Hannity. They are the exact same person. They're just hitting for a different team, and they're divisive. They're trying to divide you. Never once have I heard Joy Reid or Rachel Maddow on the Democrat side say anything good that any Republican let alone Trump has done. How is that possible? How is it possible that there's nothing good from that side? And then the same thing on Sean Hannity's side. And I'm using these three as examples because I think they're probably three of the most well-known left and right, pundits or personalities. But Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham, maybe that's another one. Jesse Waters, that's another guy on the Republican side. Those three. There's a guy named Greg Gutfeld. He's got a show called The Five. Again, those guys, all four of them, how is it possible that there's not one good thing you see any Democrat or when Biden was in the presidency, there's not one good thing that they've done? It's just not possible. And so when you have people that are that divisive, I really think you need to discount their stances on things because they're not coming at anything from a nuanced perspective. They're just coming at it to get ratings. They're telling their base of people what they want to hear, and they're riling up their base. That's all they're doing. They're not trying to give you nuance. They're not trying to give you, both sides of the story. They're not trying to add common sense to things. They're not trying to raise up to 30,000 feet and look at everything. And they're definitely not trying to call a spade a spade. All right, sorry about that. That was a little bit of a soapbox, but I did want to start with that because I do want to talk a few more things on this Russia-Ukraine thing, and I think this will round out this topic for now. But the first thing I wanted to do is, I want to read you a couple things that I wrote on social media, and I do apologize for those of you that do follow me there. This is a little bit of repeat, but remember, repetition is the mother of all learning. So you'll hearing it twice, maybe it sinks in even more. Okay, so here's the first thing I wrote. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to play a magnificent clip from Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I guess he officially is my new bromance, my man crush. But this is so good. This is so good. It's actually part of a bigger hour and 20-minute interview sit down he did in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'm going to listen to the entire thing, and that probably will be something that I play that entire podcast and kind of comment on it. But this is a 6 or 7 minute clip. I may jump in here and there, but it is really good because everything we talked about and we've talked about collectively in terms of Ukraine, Russia, he does a really nice job of bringing or taking it back to 1991 in the Cold War and really helping you understand what I will then read to you next.
This is not an attack by Putin on Ukraine in the way that we are told every day. This started in 1990, February 9th, 1990. James Baker III, our Secretary of State, said to Mikhail Gorbachev, NATO will not move 1 inch eastward if you agree to German unification, basically ending World War II. And Gorbachev said, that's very important. Yes, NATO doesn't move, and we agreed to German unification. The U.S. then cheated on this, already starting in 1994, when Clinton signed off on basically a plan to expand NATO all the way to Ukraine. This is when the so-called neocons took power.
All right, really quick. By the way, if you haven't done this and you get a free moment, seriously, do this. Just Google current NATO map. And, you kind of need to see a visual of this, and you need to see what the NATO country lineup looks like attached to the eastern border of Russia. And basically, think about it like this. Think about dividing the United States in half. I won't pick a certain state, but dividing it in half, and then pretty much the entire west side is all NATO except maybe one state, okay? And right now, it's kind of exactly like that. Ukraine and Belarus are the only two countries that are bordering Russia's eastern border that are not part of Ukraine. So of the entire enormous Russian eastern border, there's only a stretch of, I think, maybe, I don't know, 1,200, 1,500 miles, something along those lines. But it's literally only Belarus and Ukraine. And the Ukraine border with Russia is bigger than Belarus. And that's the one that matters more to, to Putin, to Russia, and all that. Secondly, again, Jeffrey Sachs talks about the neocons. Remember, that's George W. Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, Condoleezza Rice, that crew. And by the way, that crew, I'm telling you, they were very aligned with the Clinton family. And that's why you see Bill Clinton and Hillary always palling around with George W. Bush. I mean, we talked about that at Jimmy Carter's funeral. We talked about that so many times. But the reason those guys are cordial with each other is they've always been cordial with each other. We just thought they hated them when they were both respectively, leading politicians, but it was all a game. It was that uniparty facade that we've talked about with other people like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell on the Republican side, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer on the Democrat side. These guys are all in it together. They absolutely are. And the Clintons and the Bushes were as well. Okay, sorry, Professor Sachs.
And Clinton was the first agent of this. And the expansion of NATO started in 1999 with Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic. At that point, Russia didn't much care. There was no border other than with the Königsberg, but other than that, there was no direct threat.
Really quick. So again, 1999, remember the Soviet Union was disbanded in 1991. Ukraine became its own sovereign country in 1991. And so in 1999, you've got three countries, Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. And again, this is that NATO expansion we've talked about.
Then the U.S. led the bombing of Serbia in 1999. That was bad, by the way, because that was a use of NATO to bomb a European capital, Belgrade, 78 straight days to break the country apart.
Okay, you know what? This is so much to digest, so I will stop and break things down. So that was that whole Serbia getting broken in half and the creation of Kosovo. Okay, I am trying to find somebody to bring on the podcast to specifically talk about that. But again, remember, that was strictly done so that the United States could set up a military base in the new Kosovo and really have a presence in that Eastern European area. And they did. I mean, think about it. Literally via NATO, they started an attack against Serbia, and at the end of that attack, and who knows how many, hundreds of thousands of dead soldiers or dead people, quite frankly, the country became split into two, and that's the way it is now. You've got Serbia, and then you've got Kosovo, and there's a United States military base on Kosovo, one of over 750 military bases we have across the world. That's pretty insane. More to come on that, by the way.
The Russians didn't like that very much. But Putin became president. They swallowed it. They complained. But even Putin started out pro-European, pro-American, actually asked maybe we should join NATO when there was still the idea of some kind of mutually respectful relationship.
Really quick on this. So that's true also. Putin asked Bill Clinton if they could join NATO, and basically Clinton said no. He pretty much, originally he said yes. How crazy is that? Because when, again, Russia disbanded, and that was in Ronald Reagan's presidency, the talk started about Russia joining NATO and everybody being friends and everybody playing in the sandbox together. And then finally, when Putin got around to having serious discussions with Bill Clinton basically said, dude, that's never going to happen. That's a true story. You can look all that up. And then Clinton was like, I never had sexual relations with that woman. 12 seconds later, I had sexual relations with that woman. I had a friend tell me I've been too serious lately, so I'm going to try to be funny again. Okay, let's get back to this.
Then 9/11 came, then came Afghanistan, and the Russians said, yeah, we'll support you. We understand, to root out terror. But then came two other decisive actions. In 2002, the United States unilaterally walked out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty.
Okay, really quick, because I think the chronology of this is very important, and it's really good to have this in your mind. So remember, it all started in 1991, Soviet Union, basically gets broken up. Remember Reagan, he's like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And so that happens, okay, as part of the concession for East Germany and West Germany to just become Germany. Ukraine gets to become their own independent nation. And again, the whole deal was, that's fine, but do not bring Ukraine into NATO. Okay, that was the whole deal. So now we have 9/11 happening in 2001, and this is actually ridiculously important because remember, when 9/11 happened, hold on. When Russia, basically the Soviet Union, got disbanded, I've said this a lot, but I want to keep saying it. That took away the enemy of the United States. That took away the big bad wolf, the boogeyman. And that also took away the mechanism with which the military industrial complex and the United States war machine operated, okay? You could have a defense budget of $850 billion every year because you're at war and because big bad Russia, we have to protect ourselves. Seriously, think about it. I hope this is starting to really make sense. So when that got taken away in 1994, there is no Russia anymore. There is no Soviet Union. I'm sorry. I kind of use these words interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable. The Soviet Union was what got disbanded. Russia is basically what's remained of the old school Soviet Union. So think about it. From 94 roughly to 2001, I'll have to go back and look at what the defense budget was during those years, but technically it should have been a lot less because we're not at war anymore, and there's no boogeyman, there's no big bad wolf, there's no enemy. And so you shouldn't have to spend $850 billion on defense because really there's nobody to defend it from. So one school of thought is that 9/11, and the reason a lot of people say it's an inside job, and the reason a lot of people have poked so many holes in it, is because 9/11 created Islamic terrorism. It created, weapons of mass destruction, and it created Al-Qaeda. It didn't create Al-Qaeda. Well, it kind of did, but it created the next enemy of the United States, which became this fanatical Muslim world. Okay? Does that make sense? So now here we are with Jeffrey Sachs and this, and it's 2001, 9/11 happens. So once again, the military, I'm sure the budget skyrocketed. So it's like the military industrial complex is right back in business. Think about that. Seriously, it's right back in business. We had the Cold War for all those years. Well, even before that, we had Vietnam, then the Cold War with Russia, then that ended. They probably, from 1994 to 2001 or to 2000, they're like, dude, we need something. We need it. We need a playground to launder this money or to do whatever we're going to do. Even if it's not laundering money, do whatever they're going to do. And then that's when September 11th happened. So what he's about to get into is really another huge thing that the United States did that they shouldn't, and that is they pulled out of this anti-ballistic agreement, which basically meant we're not going to nuke each other. Now all of a sudden the U.S. is like, yeah, we're not going to be a part of that. Maybe we will nuke you.
This was probably the most decisive event, never discussed in this context. But what it did was trigger the U.S. putting in missile systems in Eastern Europe that Russia views as a dire, direct threat. In 2004-5, we engaged in a soft regime change operation in Ukraine. But in 2009, Yanukovych won the election and he became president in 2010 on the basis of neutrality for Ukraine.
Okay, this is where it gets really important, and quite frankly, this is where it really heats up. So remember, we've talked about this a lot of times. We've talked about Viktor Yanukovych, the democratically elected president of Ukraine in 2009, and then here we are coming into 2010.
That calmed things down because the U.S. was pushing NATO, but the people of Ukraine on the opinion polls didn't even want to be in NATO. They knew that the country is divided between ethnic Ukrainian, ethnic Russian. What do we want with this? We want to stay away from your problems.
By the way, that's a very important point as well. You know, again, the country of Ukraine at that time really was divided. Half of them felt they were Ukrainian and they basically identified as Ukrainian and their own culture. And then the other half, they honestly they identified as Russian, even though they lived in Ukraine. Maybe they even technically were quote unquote Ukrainian, but they absolutely identified as Russian people. And from what I've read, they spoke Russian more than they even spoke Ukrainian.
So in February 22nd, 2014, the United States participated actively in the overthrow of Yanukovych. A typical U.S. regime change operation, have no doubt about it. And the Russians did us a favor. They intercepted a really ugly call between Victoria Nuland, my colleague at Columbia University now, between her and the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Piat, who's a senior State Department official till today.
Okay, there's that name, Victoria Nuland, again. Gosh, who did I talk to about that? Somebody. Oh, I think I spoke to Christine Lynn on the episode from last Friday, the interview where we talked about Victoria Nuland. I think it was her. Maybe it was somebody else. But I am going to absolutely deep dive on her, but she again is one of the most powerful and least well-known people that had an incredible role in United States geopolitics, and not for the positive. I mean, I guess for the positive, depending on who is determining what's positive. I mean, she's very hated by most world leaders in pretty much every country. But anyway.
And they talked about regime change. They said, who's going to be the next government? All of this is to say, the U.S. then said, okay, now NATO's really going to enlarge. And Putin kept saying, stop. You promised no NATO enlargement. It's been, by the way, I forgot to mention, in 2004, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, 7 more countries.
So that's a little backtracking, but remember in 1999, I think it was Hungary, the Czech Republic, and somebody else joined NATO. Now in 2004, Slovakia, Lithuania, Estonia, and these countries joined NATO. So again, if you look at a map, you'll see they're basically trying to not really surround Russia, but they're trying to make the eastern border of Russia border all NATO countries. And again, the only 2 countries that currently are not NATO countries that border Russia are Belarus and, you guessed it, Ukraine.
By the way, I forgot to mention, in 2004, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, 7 more countries in the not 1 inch eastward. And then, okay, it's a long story, but the U.S. kept rejecting the basic idea: don't expand NATO to Russia's border in a context where we're putting in goddamn missile systems after breaking a treaty. 2019, we walked out of the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. On December 15th, 2021, Putin put on the table a draft Russia-U.S. security agreement.
Okay, this is really important for the dates. December 15th, 2021. Hey, December 15th, that's actually my mom's birthday and my friends Michelle Trimmer and Kevin Crociato's birthday. All right, I will not forget that. Okay, so December 15th, 2021, Putin suggested this. Now, remember, we withdrew from Afghanistan in August 30th of 2021. This is why, personally, I really think my theory of Ukraine becoming Afghanistan 2.0 holds a lot of water. But remember, August 30th, 2021, that's when Biden had that awful retraction from Afghanistan. Remember, man, that was so much controversy. And so now here we are, 2 to 3 months later, and Putin is trying to set this peace agreement up with Ukraine not becoming again part of NATO.
You can find it online. The basis of it is no NATO enlargement. I called the White House that next week after that, begging them, take the negotiations. Putin's offered something, avoid this war. Oh, Jeff, there's not going to be a war. Announce that NATO's not going to enlarge. Oh, don't worry, NATO's not going to enlarge. I said, oh, you're going to have a war over something that's not going to happen? Why don't you announce it? And he said, no, our policy is an open door. This is Jake Sullivan.
I swear to God, we're doing better analysis than most professional news people. So Jake Sullivan, remember, that was Biden's national security advisor, and that was the guy that was absolutely at the heart of the Afghanistan withdrawal in terms of a leadership position, which again was August 30th, 2021. And the reason why Jeffrey Sachs is so legit is because these are the people he's interacting with. So he's talking to Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, and he's saying, hey, Putin is offering a peace treaty on this, and Jake Sullivan, probably because they wanted to go to war. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. This stuff is super plausible. Probably because, they knew that they're pretty much going to drive Putin into invading. I mean, it's plausible. It's definitely plausible. Otherwise, why not just sign an agreement saying, hey, cool, we're not going to let Ukraine into NATO, and there probably would have been no war. Remember, I also talked about how, and I think that comedian Dave Smith played that clip where Putin asked the head of NATO at that time, that Jens Stedelman or whatever that dude's name was, and that guy laughed at him and he said, we're not putting anything in writing. So this is really interesting that we're kind of piecing this together. So here we are again, late December 2021, and Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor to Biden, is not willing to really even have a discussion with Jeffrey Sachs about this.
Our policy is an open door policy. Open door for NATO enlargement. That is under the category of bullshit, by the way. You don't have your right to put your military bases anywhere you want and expect peace in this world. They turned down the negotiations. Then the special military operation started.
I hadn't really heard that term before, but that's the term Christine Lynn used in her interview that we did last week. SMO, special military operation.
And 5 days later, Zelensky says, okay, neutrality. And then the United States and Britain said, no way.
This is amazing. This is like totally connecting all the dots. I think I talked about this previously, but remember I talked about how Boris Johnson, remember that dude? He looks like the guy from Dumb and Dumber, I think Dumber, and crazy hair dude. He went over he was a former prime minister of the UK or of England, I'm sorry, and he went over to Ukraine, and he's the one that convinced Zelensky not to accept this peace agreement and kind of to fight on. And by the way, he was sent there on behalf of the Biden administration.
You guys fight on. We got your back. We don't have your front. You're all going to die. But we got your back as we kept pushing them into the front lines. That's 600,000 deaths now of Ukrainians since Boris Johnson flew to Kyiv to tell them to be brave.
Oh, wow. He said it right there. Boris Johnson. Okay, cool. All right. You know what? That's the entire clip that I had. The interview is like an hour and 30 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes. I will listen to that entire thing because I have a feeling there's going to be I think I have a feeling that entire interview is going to be complete fire and I'll end up playing it. So anyway, all right, man, we're at 35 minutes. Oh my God, I can't believe this entire episode was that. But all right, that's it. I'm not going to really talk about anything else. I really hope between the past 3 days, though, and the past several episodes, Christine Lin's interview from last Thursday or last Friday, I think it was last Friday, and then going over the press conference, the Trump-Zelensky press conference, and then this, I really do hope you look at things, through a different lens. You don't need to agree with all this stuff. Honestly, that's totally up to you, but at least have this set of facts as you start to form your opinion on what's really going on. And the other thing is, anybody that you talk to who is against a peace agreement right now, who is against, for example, I think I heard Trump is talking about lifting tariffs from Russia. And if you are lifting the tariffs on Russia as part of the peace agreement to end this war, if you talk to anybody and they say, oh my God, Trump's lifting tariffs and sanctions, I'm sorry, not tariffs, sanctions from Russia, and they say, oh, he's a Putin puppet, they're a complete idiot, because by lifting sanctions off of Russia, whom, by the way, is a top 5 producer of natural gas, liquefied natural gas, LNG, as well as a top 5 producer in oil, and let's say the free market opens up and we start buying and selling and trading again with Russia in terms of oil and natural gas, you know what that ideally means? Now, I'm saying ideally because hopefully they won't allow the oil companies to screw us, but that means there's more supply in the market for oil, and that means that should get us down to $2 a gallon gas again. It doesn't matter if it's 2025 or if it's 1975. There's enough oil in this world for it to be $2. 99-cent gallon of gas. It's the greed of the oil companies and, quite frankly, also the greed of the governments of these countries that is keeping that. It's not a supply chain. It's not a supply issue. It's a greed issue. So anyway, if the sanctions are lifted off of Russia and anybody thinks that's a negative thing, they are absolutely clueless, and their only basis of analysis of that is Putin, bad man, Putin, bad man. Stupid. All right. Sorry, guys. I try not to use language like that. I really do. I find myself getting I'm getting zesty. I like that term, man. I like that term. I blame Jalen Ramsey.
What you think? You tell me. You tell me.
Super zesty. All right, everybody. Let's see. Thursday, Friday, I did end up doing an interview with Alan Shabarro, the military Marine Special Forces sniper. Dude is a badass. It was actually really good. He's a really emotional guy. He's like one of these like gentle giant teddy bears who could probably rip your limbs off and you wouldn't even know what happened, and you'd be standing there with like no arms being like, wait a minute, what the heck happened? Anyway, it was really good. I'll try to get that edited and maybe release that on Thursday, or maybe I'll do another Friday interview release because it's a little bit over an hour, and that'll give you guys the weekend to watch it. All right, that's it. Stay zesty, call a spade a spade.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.